Hello and welcome to a fresh new segment of my video and discussion series, which I've called The Peripheral Perspective. Inspiration is not a consistent thing for me, so here's to striking while the iron is hot, and I hope you enjoy what I have to share about the upcoming global cycle shift. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melanie Halpert. I am a 5'1" quad right splenic projector. Very, very intuitive, investigative, heretical, time to share when the time is right. I have been 20 years in the field of holistic health. And since 2008, I've been a certified body talk practitioner, helping people with all kinds of ailments, all kinds of pain, all kinds of confusion on their life path. And I am also a certified Living Your Design guide and human design analyst in training. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I so appreciate those of you who have been watching, liking, sharing, subscribing. It's it's an interesting thing for me to now have a YouTube channel and experimenting with this medium, especially as a quad right, where things are really designed to be pulled out of me. And I mean, ultimately pulled out of me by another person, by other people. So using my own visuals, like visual and written cues is always interesting because I literally never know what it is that's going to come out of my mouth, even though it is me who has created all of these slides from scratch. And just a shout out to the sources where I got all of these images: Jovian Archive, mybodygraph.com, Marianne Winiger made some of the images that you will be seeing on these slides. So I wouldn't have been able to put this presentation together without them. And I'm very appreciative because this is kind of like a springboard for my own creativity. And it's exciting to watch this evolve as I share subjects that I'm passionate about with all of you. So my intention with this presentation, while it is something that is quite involved and can go quite in depth, I'd kind of like to gear it more towards people with little to, I'm not going to say little to no understanding of human design. It could be people who do have an interest in human design, but also people who have never heard of human design and may be watching this for, the first time, learning about this stuff for the first time. So as complex as it can be, and as much as it could be exciting for people to really go deeper into the details, I'd like to keep it to a somewhat surface view as not to overwhelm people, and also kind of share what is, essentially most important. So right now, as I'm recording this, we are in September 2021, and we've got this massive shift in global cycle, which is happening 6 years from now in 2027. So officially in February 2027. But unless you're really living under a rock or have no pulse, this is something that you can feel you can feel the undertow of it. You can feel the rumblings of it. The rumblings have been felt for quite some time. I would say at least a couple of decades now, and intensifying in nature. Things seeming to get more and more chaotic, but there is a method to the madness. Even with all of the stuff that's going on collectively now, that seems to be centered around perhaps a few very specific topics, there really is a much, much larger picture view. And this is what I'd like to bring to your attention today. So the slide that we are looking at right now is an amazing slide that was put together. It was really from a course, the Global Consciousness Program by Ra Uru Hu, the original messenger of the human design system. And it was Marianne Winiger, one of the kind of like original gangsters of human design, who put this table together. And what it is a table that shows shifts in the global cycles from 16,513 BC to 3,674 AD. And so if you look towards the bottom of the slide, you will see a couple of arrows that are pointed inwards at the table. And this is where we're at. This is where we're at now. And you can see, I mean, we've been through a lot. So, we've all been through a lot in this lifetime, but I mean, lifetime upon lifetime upon lifetime. This is a global consciousness program. And if you look at the slide a little bit more carefully, I mean, I know there's a lot of information on there, some of it perhaps more relevant to you than others, but something that's really important is that you will see that there are some places where it says the lock and some places where it says the key. So these global cycles, it's like a pattern where there is a key and there is a lock, like a gear shifting that literally turns and clicks into place. All of this is tied into something called the precession of the equinoxes. So those of you who understand kind of the larger cycles, there is this thing that is called the precession of the equinoxes, and it really is looking at things from a much, much larger view. And so what I wanted to illustrate on this slide is the coming shift. And I will not be going into detail about the numbers. I mean, some of the numbers here, there's a lot of numbers on the slides and a lot of keywords on the slides. But what's really, really important to understand is that for the last 411 years, well, it'll be 411 years approximately, we've been operating under a very, very specific background frequency. And this is called the cross of planning. And if you think about it, I mean, whenever you were born, it doesn't even matter, when you were born, it doesn't matter even if you're 100 years old, you were born under the cross of planning. Your parents, your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, I mean, anybody in your conceivable ancestral line has been born under the cross of planning. So in a sense, this is really all we know. This is what we establish as reality. This is what is the status quo. This is life. We take this for granted. However, in 2027, when that shift happens, that the key and the lock, that gear clicks into a new place for another 411 years from 2027 to 2438, and we enter the cross of the sleeping phoenix, this is going to be a radical, radical shift in background frequency. It's kind of like when you go see a play and you're sitting in the audience and they have this amazing set. And then the scene ends and the curtains come together and then the curtains come apart again and it's a completely different scene. This is what is going to occur when we leave the cross of planning and enter the cross of the sleeping phoenix. It is a drastic, drastic change of scenery that not a single person alive on this planet today can even conceive of. So this figure that I have in the middle of the slide, the reason why I put it there is because that little yellow diamond in the center of the body graph, this is the G center, which is our center for identity, love, and direction. This center has two very, very important crosses, which are implicated in that whole lock and key process and are also intrinsically connected to the cosmos and to the seasons. So each of us has a G center in our own body, in our own body graph. And we literally are these microcosms of the macrocosm. Doesn't matter how radical you are, it doesn't matter how, off the beaten path you are, we are all tied into these cycles, and it is inescapable, truly inescapable. So putting it into a bit of a different visual here, I've actually created two body graphs. So one body graph is showing the cross of planning, so which is the background frequency that we're still operating under until 2026. Well, until, technically February 2027. But I've put arrows just to highlight the 4 different gates that make up the cross of planning. So this cross, the cross of planning, has been very much about bargains, deals, a lot of tribal and collective values, infrastructure, institutions. There are certain agreements. So this entire background frequency has been built upon these agreements. But then when that shift occurs, and something that's interesting to notice, if you look at the image of the cross of the sleeping phoenix, you can see I've put other arrows there that kind of show it's like that gear shifting one gate backwards. And so this is something interesting to note, because this wheel that you see, the mandala wheel, so this is kind of like a snapshot of the cosmos in a way. And all of the planets are constantly making their round through the mandala wheel. And other than the lunar nodes, they all go in a counterclockwise fashion. However, the precession of the equinoxes goes in a clockwise fashion. And it's since 1961 that we actually entered the final phase of this cross, the cross of planning. So 1961 to 2027, we're kind of like in the final throes of this background frequency. So yeah, so I just wanted to give you a visual showing that when that shift happens, it's actually kind of clicking into place one gate. It's going to click one gate almost like backwards of what you see. And so as opposed to this background frequency that has been all about the bargain, these arrangements between people, between tribes, between, all in these different ways, these agreements and these institutions and this infrastructure, we're really heading into a completely different energy that is very much going to be all about being busy surviving. Now, this is not meant to be a doomsday scenario or any of that, but I live in Montreal, Canada, and we have a pretty harsh winter here. And every time we have summer, it's so beautiful, but it's so short-lived. And I've lived here, been born and raised here, and every year it's the same thing where I always hope that winter is not going to come. Unfortunately, winter has never not come. It always does. And so where we can't sometimes really be in denial about the weather, this is something where, just like with the winter in Montreal, you cannot close your eyes and make it go away. You can't. And I know that with everything amping up, it's a big temptation to just, meditate it away, close your eyes, hum your tune. But this is an opportunity to be prepared. Just like having a weather app on your computer, on your phone, that you can just take a peek and see what's going to be happening. What do I need to do? How do I need to be prepared? This is really just to give you a heads up that we are in for a drastic change of scenery, and that by understanding this, you too can know how to be prepared. So something that's really kind of very, very important, I mean, critically important, that the majority of humanity is still totally asleep to, is that we actually underwent a major mutation of the species in 1781. So we were still under the cross of planning at that point, but interestingly, this coincided with the discovery of the planet Uranus by Herschel. So we actually transitioned out of the seven-centered Homo sapien, and we mutated into a different being entirely. We are actually a transitional species, Homo sapien intransitus. And this is something that is leading us to the next mutation in 2027, at this time, only 6 years away. So whereas our ancestor, the seven-centered being, about 85 to 90,000 years ago, this being had a Saturnian life cycle. They were governed by a Saturnian life cycle, which was an average of about 28 years. Whereas we, since 1781, are governed by a Uranian life cycle, hence having an average lifespan of 84 years. And you can see, I mean, it's so kind of sad to see that in many ways, there's so much pressure for people, individuals by, you know, not even 20 years old to know what it is that they want to do with their life, considered to be an adult at 18, when with this shift in lifespan, we're only entering adulthood after our Saturn return, so around 29, 30 years old. And we only actually reach our point of maturity around 38 to 44 years old, around our Uranus opposition. And our actual flowering phase comes with our Chiron return, which is usually around 50 to 51. So all this to say, we're like rushed, you know, like really rushed through life. We're rushed to find maturity. We're rushed to make decisions. We're rushed to, you know, keep up with the Joneses and have a certain lifestyle, when it's like, you know, our half-life around 40, when we really reach that point of what we call the out-breath, and then head into that flowering phase. And a great quote here by Ra, something very profound to understand about our ancestors is that you have nothing in common with anyone born between 1781, despite the illusion. You have a totally different inner system. You're wired differently. We may look similar on the surface, but we are not. And the difference isn't simply that we are wired differently in the infrastructure. We are biologically different. So this is the thing, we have a major, major opportunity to awaken in form at this time. It's like being in this model car, like our vehicle, our form, our body is not the same as our ancestor. We have completely different capabilities in terms of our self-reflective consciousness that we never had before. So now is really the time to get a grip, get a grasp of what these potentials are, and to put them to use so that we really can kind of get the most out of what we are, who we are, how we're actually designed, no longer living in these old, outdated ways. So we just talked a little bit about the mutation of the species in 1781, the transitioning from a seven-centered being to a nine-centered being. And then from 1781 to 2027, this is called the Plutonic interregnum. So everything, I mean, everything is tied into these planetary cycles. Pluto has a very, very powerful cycle. And so this cycle that we're looking at is 246 years. So that the average cycle is anywhere between 246 to 252 years. But this is it. This is Pluto's interregnum. Everything that has taken place from the moment the nine-centered being emerged in 1781 to the mutation of the solar plexus center and the changing of the cycle beginning in 2027 is dominated by Pluto. So we're really heading into like this mutation that is happening in 2027, this big global cycle shift. Not only is there a massive change in background frequency, but there is also deep, deep changes happening in the solar plexus center of the body. So those of you who know about human design, or even if you've just taken maybe Living Your Design, you understand that each of the 9 centers has a certain function. And some of them can overlap. The solar plexus is one of those centers, because not only is it an awareness center, an emerging awareness center, but it is also a powerful motor. And this is really one of the big things that is changing with this mutation, is not only the motor function of the solar plexus, but also its awareness potential. So a great quote here by Leela Swan Herbert: Pluto provides us with the truth, and the truth mutates over time. Every gate mutates as Pluto passes through it in its approximately 252-year movement through all 64 gates. Our current orbit of Pluto around the Rave Wheel began the mutation of the 9-centered human in 1781, and Pluto's next orbit of the wheel will begin the mutation of the solar plexus. What was at one time the God's truth then became a collective truth, which will become the truth of the individual. And so at a very, very profound level, the mutation that's happening is linked to one of the codons, like the amino acid codons, histidine. So, I mean, this is something that's really in depth, really involved. You can see here that I've put the 2 hexagrams. One is gate 55 and one is gate 49. And you can see I also put in terms of the DNA, there's like a lot of, there's so much incredible stuff about human design and how it actually is, intrinsically connected to the DNA and to the amino acids of the body. And this is a very, very deep mutation that is occurring. So we had talked about this change to the motor function and the awareness potential of the solar plexus. So for those of you who are maybe new to this brown triangle here, this is the solar plexus. This is gate 55, which is undergoing a major mutation. And the codon that is associated to gate 55 is histidine. And in the wheel, in the mandala wheel, which we had seen in some other slides, there's always like opposition in the wheel. There's always these programming partners, these binaries. So the partner of the 55 is the 59, which happens to be in the sacral center of the body. And this is all about sexuality. The 59 is very much connected to sexuality, connected to bonding, connected to mating. So one of the big things too that's changing is the way that we bond and also the way that we reproduce. There's a big, big shift in terms of intimacy and in terms of priorities, like the priorities and relationships and in bonding is going to be changing very drastically. And so here I've actually put a little beaker. And this was a visual cue for me because, one of the big things that you hear being talked about in the media is climate change. And look, I'm not here to preach anything to anybody, but at the same time, something that has really come to my attention in studying human design is that mutation requires heat. So looking at things from the bigger picture perspective, a lot of the things that we, can blame on this, that, or the other, sometimes there are reasons that go beyond what is being like pimped out as the narrative, or what, seems like a concrete reason of why. So I'm not saying this is good or bad, but all I'm saying is that the mutation is happening and it requires heat. So this is one of the reasons why the planet is heating up in the way that it is. And so I put another quote here by Ra. In the same way that for the last 400 years, the way in which we've connected to the other was based on whether they were going to be our loyal partner. The background frequency has affected how all of our relationships have worked through the ideas of love, honor, and obey. The 1949, so this is a channel between the root center and the solar plexus, is about flirtation, looking for the resources, and together with the 4037, so this links the solar plexus and the heart center or the ego, we get to building the community to look after the children. So this is a big thing that's shifting along with bonding, reproduction, intimacy, the motor function and awareness potential. We also have a big change happening in terms of these bargains, these these bargains, these deals, these contracts, and also like a lot of things that really tend to be associated with tribal values, the tribe. So a lot of what has been very tribal, what has been very collective is about to change very drastically to a different energy as we cross that threshold into 2027. So, with the bargain breaking down, which has really been the fabric, the fabric that has tied everything together for the last 400 plus years, that energy breaking down and then shifting into this very individual energy that links the sacral to the throat center through the 3420. This is the one manifesting generator channel in the entire body graph. This is going from caring for your neighbor, loyalty, doing things for others, to a very seemingly selfish energy. So there are a lot of people that are going to have difficulty with this energy if they don't understand it. You can already see it now. There's a huge division between people who say what's good for one is good for everyone, and then other people who are completely polarized and they're like, no, every man for himself. I do what's right for me. Everything is a binary, this or that, and human design is not moralistic. So the bottom line is that all of these bargains, all of these institutions, especially these institutions that we have been giving our authority over to for the last 400 plus years, are crumbling, and they are not able to be saved. They will not be saved. They are going to crumble like dust before our very eyes. And the truth of the matter is that dominating the next 400 plus years is an energy that involves being busy surviving for oneself in the now. And that brings us to the fact that as nine-centered beings, we are not designed to make mental decisions. The seven-centered being was very much revolved around that concept, that everything was from the mind. And you can still see this very much now with certain, modalities and certain belief systems that are all about, the power of the mind. And, my job right now is really not to get into any of that. And you got to do what you got to do for you. But I've definitely started to very clearly see what happens when we use the mind to make decisions versus when we're actually aligned with what what we are designed to use to make decisions, how the mind shines as outer authority. Technically, for us, our mind, other than to analyze, to compare, is useless. However, when we're aligned to what it is within us that is meant to be used to make decisions, that is really when our mind can shine for others. When liberated from making decisions, outer authority becomes a source of knowledge for others. And so, what can you trust to make healthy decisions? This is something that is going to be paramount moving forward into this new era with the global cycle shift. Things on the outside are going to keep on amping up, getting more and more and more intensified. And there literally is going to be nobody outside of yourself that you will be able to trust. And if you trust your own mind to lead you down the right path, then you will likely be very, very deceived. Each and every one of us has a very specific way to make decisions that are healthy and that lead to fulfilling outcomes. It is not a one size fits all. So there's this whole thing, you could see like, you got to trust your gut. You got to follow your heart. You got to listen to your intuition. Well, which one is it? It's not all of them. And like I said, it is not a one size fits all. Each of us is unique. Each of us is configured differently. The majority of us have something very tangible, very visceral inside of our bodies that is designed to be the infallible thing that we can trust to guide us on our path. There are beings who are really here to trust their feelings once they have given themselves time to wait for that emotional clarity. For those who have emotional authority, there's no truth in the now. Their clarity emerges over time. Then we have sacral beings who truly are here to trust their gut response, moment by moment. Then we have splenic beings who also are here to trust moment by moment. But for them, this is all about their intuitive awareness. This is the hub of intuition, instinct, taste. And then we have our ego beings. So these rare ego beings, whether ego manifested or ego projected, who are here to follow their will. And our G projectors, our self-projected projectors, who are here to literally follow their bliss, to see what they say spontaneously. And then our two last ones, while they don't have an inner authority, they have a very, very reliable process of authority. So the mental projector, who has what is called environmental authority, where they need to have these neutral sounding boards in their entourage, people around them who are not trying to influence them, who they can literally speak aloud to and hear the truth of their words come back to them over time. And then lunar beings, so our reflectors, who make up less than 2% of the population. So our reflectors who need a full lunar cycle, also speaking to trusted friends, trusted family, trusted people in their entourage, not trying to influence them, but just so that they can allow things to fall into place as they go through their very own personalized lunar cycle with the transiting of the moon. And another great quote from Ra: "It's not easy being your own authority because there are those who are depending on you to be a reliable slave." So it's not a comfortable quote. It's really not. But at the same time, how much of your life have you actually lived as yourself? So I always need to have at least one slide that's somewhat controversial. And this is my slide for this presentation. And it's really not meant to be arrogant and it's not meant to be condescending, but at the same time, it is meant to be educational and, just again, illustrating a simple reality. And so what you see here is I have a vision board and a piece of burning sage with big X's through them. And look, I am totally, we all have to do ourselves, you do you. And it's not to say that creating vision boards isn't a fun activity, and it's not to say that burning sage doesn't have its benefits. But at the same time, if your car broke down and you took it to the mechanic and they said, well, let's make a vision board and let's burn some sage, you would say, screw you, I'm taking my car elsewhere. So this is really all about mechanics. Life is navigation. If you're not moving correctly, you're going to miss what's there for you and you will get the homogenized direction, nothing else. We live in a program where we are constantly being homogenized to be like everybody else, to think the same, to feel the same, to believe the same things, to have the same opinions, to strive for the same goals. Yet we are all unique and we all have the potential for a unique, differentiated perspective. So whereas it's totally fine to get your creativity on, to make that vision board, to burn your sage, do whatever floats your boat. But at the same time, a lot of the time, these are Band-Aids. These are fleeting. These are things that are maybe great in the moment, but then it always comes back to the same wall, that wall of resistance that you hit when you are not operating correctly. Now, it's not popular to talk about things like this. Like everybody wants to just like wave a magic wand and make everything go away. And if only we can, like meditate hard enough, then we're going to raise our vibration and shift into a whole new reality. But I mean, in a way, those things can be helpful. And again, it's not here to diss any really powerful tools that can help you stay grounded and anchored in these times. But in a way, it's not enough. And as a heretic, I am a heretical investigator. I am here to lead those who recognize and invite my guidance towards a safer future by perfecting their form for survival. It is all about practicality for me. So if I cannot offer you something practical, then I am useless. And in terms of perfecting your form, this is all about modifying your behavior to be able to survive. Most people have no idea that their behavior is actually not conducive in moving forward during these times. So if you're looking for a sustainable shift in frequency, not just something to prop you up, something that you can use to bypass, something that you can use as a Band-Aid, something that is really designed to be a tool to help you, but is not going to be the fix that you're looking for, then, I would really encourage you to look into what it is that is consistently creating resistance in your life. All of us, no matter how heavily defined our body graph is, there is always openness in us that is sabotaging us, that is hijacking us away from our true nature. And if we do not decondition, so start to shed some of the ways that we have literally been conditioned to be someone else our entire life, everything is a Band-Aid. Great quote by Peter Schubert. Whatever your not self strategy is, the mind will try to make it look like it is something that makes you more valuable, that makes you a very good person. So if you have to suffer, even if you will become sick, it doesn't matter. This is the price we have to pay because we are such a good human being. And so this era that we are heading into, it's like there's almost no margin of error. You know, there's no more room for doing things because you want to be a good person for others. I mean, this is one of the biggest things of the undefined or open solar plexus, which 47% of humanity have. Avoiding confrontation and truth, trying too hard to be nice. So all of these centers here, you can see I've put these little percentages, and these are percentages of the population who have openness in these centers. So we are no longer the seven-centered being who has all of these pretty little colorful chakras lined up, and all you have to do is like close your eyes and like breathe in the color red, and your root center is going to heal itself magically. No, there are some of us who have very, very a consistent way of dealing with that root pressure. 40% of us do not. 40% of us, no matter how much we sit on a cloud and wish it away, are always going to be at the mercy of the pressure that we take in and amplify from others. So all of these centers, wherever you have openness in your body graph, is where you're taking in that energy from others and amplifying it 200%. We are always, always taking that in, amplifying, and that's where we end up getting distorted and literally being hijacked away from who we really are. The undefined or open head, mentally scattered, losing focus. Undefined or open ajna, being mentally defensive, always needing to prove that we are mentally certain. The throat center, trying to be the star, talks too much, does too much. The G center, open or undefined, endless searching, role confusion, fixated on finding love and direction. Big one here. So the undefined or open heart center, 63% of the population. This is so much tied to our sense of self-worth, self-esteem. The undefined or open ego heart is always overcompensating. I said ego because this center, which is technically the heart center, is also known as the ego and the center of our will and willpower. So those of us who are open or undefined are always trying to prove ourselves, trying to improve ourselves. So self-help was made for this percentage of the population who feel worthless and always have to try to fix themselves to make them better. Then we've got the undefined or open sacral center, not knowing when enough is enough, overzealous, tends to take on too much. So all of the oholism in the world, whether it's, you know, being a workaholic, being a shopaholic, being a sexaholic, being a foodaholic, whatever there is, you know, a lot of it is found in the undefined center here. Especially, I mean, there's quite even though it's not the major percentage of the population, manifestors, the projectors, the reflectors, we are definitely all at the mercy of taking in and amplifying energy in the center, not knowing when enough is enough. The undefined or open spleen. So this is all about holding on to what isn't good for you. A lot of the time it's about holding on to people or relationships that aren't good for you. It is so easy to be abused with an undefined or open splenic center, especially if you have that combination with an undefined or open solar plexus, where not only are you being abused, but you can't bear to look at the truth of that. So you keep on staying in this very painful cycle instead of being able to healthily confront what needs to be confronted and to let go of what isn't good for you. The splenic center is all about our survival. And people with an undefined or open splenic center can tend to be quite rigid because they are always afraid for their survival. And so we've already covered the root. So this just kind of gives you a brief overview of some of the ways that we get taken away from who we truly are and start acting out who we are not. So learning about strategy and authority, learning all of the ways in which we tend to be conditioned by our environment, by others, by the transit field is an enormous, enormous asset moving forward into this new territory where we will not be able to give our authority away to anything or anyone outside of ourselves anymore. And that's it. You truly are unique, unlike anyone else in the world. Your birth data, knowing your birthday, your birth year, your birth time, your birth location, you literally have a map of what is conscious, of what is unconscious, of who you are, and of who you are not. Everything, literally everything that you need to start letting go of what isn't you and stepping into who you are. 2027 is coming. Are you ready to live life as yourself? As we head towards a major global cycle change in 2027, there is nothing more important than mastering the ability to navigate life in a way that fiercely honors who you are as a unique, differentiated being. Never has there been a more critical time to know what it is that you can trust infallibly from within to make healthy, fulfilling decisions and to align to your fractal family. So thank you to all of you who have made it through the video. Did you enjoy it? If so, more to come when the time is right. Would you like to learn more about your unique human design? If so, you can find me at www.melaniehalpert.com.